Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to be here once again for the 7th Annual Diversity Inclusion Research Conference. We're actually, Leslie and I are in Atlanta, and if you could see over beyond the screen, you would see that there is about 20 people here who have joined us in person, although we expect the majority of the audience, as well as the majority, in fact, pretty much all of the presenters will actually be here on Zoom. So we have a very, very interesting program today. We have several people that came over from the DISM. You can see behind us the DISM Forum. It was a 2.5-day event that talked about diversity, inclusion, service management, and the idea of learning as an industry to appreciate the importance of having standards and having processes and operations that actually make it possible for DEI to become an industry. And by that, what we mean is the ability for companies to understand exactly what they need, where they need, how much they need of it, and for providers to be able to understand how they can fit into the needs of an organization. So it's been really exciting couple of days of discussions, and now we're switching into the content for DIRC, which is, as I said, it's in our 7th year, and it's very exciting for me. This started in 2018. At the time, I was an adjunct at the City College of New York, and I had the pleasure of working with the amazing Gilda Berardino. And we had an idea. We thought, well, we're working on diversity and inclusion research. And we asked ourselves, are there other people that are interested in using research methodologies to apply, not just to study from an academic perspective, but also to apply some of the ideas to try to address real world problems? And so we thought, oh, let's do a little announcement and let's see how many people come. And on the first year, we had almost 100 people that showed up. And that year was held at CUNY, the City University of New York. And then it grew. So in 2019, we had more people. Than 2020, of course, with COVID hitting, we switched to online. And since then, we've been alternating between online and hybrid events like this one, where we had some people in person and some people online. So with that, what I would like to do is, before we tell you about the agenda, I would like to introduce my partner in crime, Leslie. And in fact, why don't I do this? I'm going to mute my microphone and you unmute your mic just on Zoom. Oh, never mind. Use my microphone. So just speak into my computer.
There's a whole lot of tech going on here today. Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Short. I'm the owner of the Kava Group. And yes, Paolo's partner in crime for many things. But we'll stay focused on this conference for today. Excited to be here. This is my second or third year with you.
Third year. Well, you've been
for this. So we're looking forward to a great day, a lot of conversation. Feel free to put questions and comments in the chat. We want to hear from you. I think there's a lot to be said, a lot to be learned, and a lot to change in our industry.
And in terms of practical aspects of the conference, one thing that I want to say is that we decided a long time ago, in fact, ever since DIRC was founded, we have a format that is a little bit unusual in that we don't do Q&A. What we have actually is fairly tight. We run a very tight ship. We have very tight schedule because we know that people like to drop in and out. And if they expect to hear a particular speaker at 12:25, then we want to make sure that that speaker is there at 12:25. And we found that with Q&A, it can get very complicated, especially with a hybrid mode. However, we have 2 breaks. And in fact, Onse, if I can ask you a favor, if you can please share there's a slide that has the agenda. If you would be so kind as to pop up instead of our opening remarks page, if you get a chance to pop up the slide that has the agenda. But basically what you're going to be seeing today is a combination of different formats. Leslie and I are here doing the opening remarks from 12 to 12:15, which means that we have to fill another 10 minutes of space before we let other people speak. And then we have a series of conversations. So first one is going to be a conversation that's going to last about 40 minutes on quantifying the experiences of women of color in leadership. And there's going to be 2 people that are going to be joining us for that particular. It's really kind of a combination between a case study, fireside chat, if you will. Then there's going to be a very interesting conversation about whether DI practitioners should be familiar with data and research. And Leslie's going to be the moderator for that very, very interesting panel with a lot of lively discussions about themes that are quite relevant today. And then we're going to have someone present about this idea of the Disability Equity Index. And it's someone from an organization called Disability In. And we find that a lot of times disability is one of the many kinds of identities that are very often forgotten or at least sort of put aside, which reminds me actually, for everybody that is online, you have the ability to turn on captions. So hopefully, and I'm sure that those of you that need have already figured that out. if there's anyone in the room, we should have asked to start. I don't believe anybody here needs captions, but if anybody would like us, we can turn on the captions so you can see them on the screen. So let us know. You would like to see. Okay, so we're going to try to see if we can turn on the captions here. We have someone in the audience that would like to see them. Now, the question is, how do you make them bigger? Because you can see the captions. And Christine, I might ask you, I know they're very small. Okay, well, would you like to maybe scoot up closer to the screen so that you can see them? Okay. Apologies for that. We had if somebody knows how to make them bigger, let us know. We'll keep them on anyway because they're down there and they can be convenient for people, whether you're online or in person. And as I was saying, guilty as charged, right? We often tend to overlook the fact that unless we're reminded, we tend to overlook the fact that disability is actually a something that we should be considering all, especially as we're working in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. During the breaks, we have two 15-minute breaks, and we're basically going to invite people during the breaks to join a breakout room where you can just chat. So if people online, especially while we are here in person, getting a coffee or running to the bathroom, whatever the case might be, if people want to engage in conversations, we're going to have the opportunity to do that during the breaks. And we encourage people to basically participate in the breakout session, unmute themselves. If any of the presenters that are online would like to join one of those sessions and have, answer any questions, that would be great. In terms of being able to interact with the audience, anyone who wishes to actually send questions to the speakers, please feel free to contact us. You can send email to info@dirc.info or info@alayer.tech. We'll leave you some of the email addresses, and we'll be more than happy to forward some of your questions to the speakers who can then answer them offline. So continuing with that, after the break at 2:15, we're going to have another session on practical ramifications of the elimination of affirmative action. And I know this is something that's been on a lot of people's minds. What does that actually mean? It started in academia, but now it's spreading to other parts of society and corporate America. We're going to talk then about diversity for what? It's going to be a presentation about exploring the rationales for hiring a diverse faculty. This is actually someone that I met about a year ago when I was invited to do essentially a debate about DEI, about some of the positive and negative aspects of DEI, especially in an academic context. And the person, Professor Azim Sharif, who's going to be joining us from UBC in Vancouver, is going to present some very interesting research that I hope will help all of us to reflect on what we tend to do in our own bubbles, our respective bubbles. We tend to sometimes make assumptions about things that may or may not be correct. And Professor Sharif is going to be bringing some very interesting data about that. Finally, during that session, we're going to have a panel or a discussion with two people on calculating the financial impact of DEI. Very excited about that because we'll show you two very, very different viewpoints, but also both very practical, that are actually used by companies and by investors to assess the value of DEI within organizations. And then we're going to have our second break. Second break, also 15 minutes, and then we're going to close out the day with 3 sessions. We're going to have one session on measuring inclusion for the cybersecurity sector, and it will be me and it's a case study that I will be bringing in somebody from an organization called the Women in Cybersecurity. We'll tell you about some amazing data that we've collected using an approach to measuring inclusion. Those of you that were here yesterday might have heard me speak about it. And then finally, we're going to have a presentation by one of our colleagues about the Job Quality Impact Explorer for frontline workers in retail. And then finally, there is a session, the very final session, actually, the person that was supposed to give that session has just informed us that she's sick. She just came back from a trip. She has a really bad flu, high fever, and coughing. And so what we will do is that we will actually be closing. So the entire schedule will be shortened by 20 minutes, which I'm sure not too many people will complain about. But we will be able, and that's Dr. Janine Lee. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well. But what we will be doing is that we will record her session at a later time. And when we release the videos of DIRC, as we usually do about a month or two after the event, we will also include her comments or her presentation. So with that, before we have another couple of minutes before we start, any from the audience, either online or in person, any questions about the format? Leslie, anything that you would like to add?
No, I'm excited. I'm choking. I don't know why, but other than that, the frog in my throat, I'm good. Yes.
So let me repeat that question. Someone in the audience in person was asking, how do we submit questions if there's not going to be time for Q&A? Can we submit questions through the chat in the Zoom? You're more than welcome to submit questions through the chat and the Zoom. We don't do Q&A just because we found that with Q&A, it's very unpredictable how long somebody will be on, what kind of questions we'll ask. If you ask questions in the chat, we are asking all the presenters to monitor the chat, and if they see something in there, to answer it. They may or may not be able to, they may miss it, but we are storing all of the questions in the chat. And so at the end of the event, if we see questions that were specific to a particular presenter that were not addressed, then we will go ahead and forward those to the presenters. So again, this was a decision that we made when we started the conference. We found that it works really well and it avoids the problems of spilling over and kind of interfering with other people's sessions. But please do feel free to engage in conversations in the chat and ask questions of each other, of the presenters, of anyone.
And then on the break, if you have any other questions for Apollo and I, we will be here.
Yeah. And you need to get a
I just put a
cough drop.
peppermint in. I don't
Yes.
know what's happening.
Yeah. In fact, taking a lead for getting a page from a book, I'm going to go grab my water, which I left in the back of the room before we get started. And so we're going to be starting here in 2 minutes. We like to be very much on time. So I'm going to grab my water and I'll be right back. Don't go away.
Fine.
All right, we're back. Thank you. I did realize one more administrative remark that I need to make. Some of you are here in person because you registered for a on-site presence with DIRC and you used a ticket that included a copy of the book Measuring Inclusion. If you're one of those people, I think there were 5 or 6 people that had essentially pre-ordered a copy of the book Measuring Inclusion. If you're here because of that, I have copies with me that I brought specifically for you. So come up to me during one of the breaks and I'll be more than happy to give you a copy of that. If at the end of the day, I may have a couple of copies left over. If I do, I'll be more than happy to share them with other people who may be interested. And as you may know, there is also, for those that are here, there is a table that has some postcards with a QR code where you can either purchase the book and, with a discount. And for those of you online, we will also be sharing a QR code where you can do that as well.